And we are live. Welcome, everybody, to the Cadaver Club. I should say welcome back to the Cadaver Club. I'm Ben. That's Patrick over there. Have Cheetah View. We got, of course, Night Down in the corner and then Coriander right there. And today we're going to be discussing Kill List. Great movie. I think, Kill List has a distinction to me to be a movie that was recommended to me when it first came out, and I started watching it, and I just could not get into it. It felt the pacing was too slow for me at the time, and I was like, I just sort of didn't finish watching it. And then when I went back to watch it, I was like, what the fuck was wrong with that dude? That movie was awesome. So, like, in my mind, the movie that always, like, upon a second watch, I always give movies a second chance based on Kill List. We got Miss C in the house. Hey, Miss C. What did you guys think of it? Just overall quick impressions. Patrick, let's start with you.
I liked it. I liked it a lot. I thought it was really interesting. I love the combination of the stories. The ending could have used a little bit more fleshed out for me, just a tiny bit fleshed out. But overall, this is a winner. This is another strong movie.
Did you? We'll get to the end when we get to it. But did you feel like you just wanted more explanation or something?
Yeah, it would have been nice to get a little bit more backstory into the play. We saw a couple of scenes that we'll talk about, but nothing really ever was brought of it.
Yeah.
And by the end, when the end happens, it takes you by a surprise in a sense, and it's like it just comes out of nowhere. And it just, I wish they just would have dropped just a couple more hints about that. But otherwise,
I kind of like how they did sort of leave certain things open, and I like the way it ends. It's very abrupt. It just cuts the scene abruptly and then flashes the title on the screen in like giant white letters. I did like that. But we'll get to the end when we get there. Knight, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, this was a really interesting watch. I mean, I really didn't know what to think at first. It kind of started off, I don't know, just like a regular type of movie. And then as it started to go along, it kind of changed, and we'll get to it, I'm sure. But it changed into something else, and I'm like, okay, well, it's going to be this type of movie. And then it went like totally in a different type of direction. So I really appreciated that, because it's, put it this way, again, it's one of these movies that makes you think a little bit more about it after you've watched it. And I've watched it twice. So that also tells me that I enjoyed it. I really did.
Was this a first time watch for everyone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yes.
Okay. Coriander, what did you think?
This was, an interesting movie. I mean, it kept you thinking, and some of the shit that happened, it's like holy shit stuff. And it's a real good movie.
Well, I guess let's just jump right into it. I think we're gonna try to be a little quicker this evening, so let's just jump right into the story. We're sort of like in the very beginning, we're jumped like right into a fight. It just starts with a fight. I mean, right?
Yeah.
So immediately they're setting up the tension between this married couple, and they have a child, of course, 7-year-old, and you just see them sort of fighting. You see the dynamic. You see that there's something bothering the husband, as far as like keeping him from wanting to go to work. And there's his wife is getting annoyed that he's not bringing home money. They're having financial struggles and stuff. What did you guys think of sort of that the first act of this movie there before the dinner party?
Yeah, I thought he had injured himself in some sort of job. I thought maybe he had and then I thought, the way they talking a little bit, I thought maybe he had PTSD, and then he was, but at the same time, they went through a lot of money in 8 months. So it's like he was working somewhere pretty good, and you can definitely see why the wife was trying to get him back up and running.
Yeah,
the whole idea. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go.
Oh, I was just saying that I thought about the PTSD as well, because it kind of seemed like that was where they were going with it, and even really up until around the dinner scene, I was still kind of thinking that. But of course, then we find out that actually that's one thing about this film that actually was kind of cool. We don't really know exactly what
Right.
happened in the past. So, anyways, yeah.
We just know some shit went down in Kiev, right? But yeah, that's the thing. They mentioned like his back injury, right? And then they say there's nothing wrong with your back, and so you're left kind of wondering like, wait, is there something wrong? Like, what's going on? And I guess you get sort of the general feeling of PTSD. Coriander, what did you think of the dynamic there in the relationship and how the movie started?
Yeah, it was interesting, because like y'all said, they're fighting. You're kind of seeing how they have an interesting relationship, and it just, it made you wonder, like, where is this movie going to take us? Because in this opening scene, you really don't know because you just see this couple fighting.
And the sound design throughout the movie, there's ominous music playing throughout the movie. So that's setting like a sort of that's setting the stage for a lot of stuff. Sound design was really interesting. And when I watched it this time around, I noticed they're showing like sort of like a montage of the family and stuff, and they're showing them having this outdoor like sword fight, right? Playing with their
yes.
Yeah. Like, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Foreshadowing, which I never noticed that before, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was a really interesting part of that. The foreshadowing part, it was like really. I guess that should have been, but of course, you're going into it not expecting anything, and so you really don't know what you're seeing. You just
there's no way that's foreshadowing.
Yeah, exactly. It looks like the family playing, having an actual good time with each other.
But there is ominous music going over it,
Right.
Well, I will say this. One thing that kind of crept into my mind is that these guys argue so much. Like, is this the type of movie where there's going to be like something's going to go like too far out of control?
Right.
So when I saw that scene, I thought about it in that sense, but I also didn't hold on to that thought because I was like, no, I don't think it's going to be like that. I thought it was going to, I mean, obviously by the name of the movie, you knew that there was something going on with, a hit list or whatever. So I was kind of waiting. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think, the movie is like, it's a slow burn, so they're sort of slowly building that story up. But after we sort of see that the couple is having a lot of tension, due to financial struggles and whatnot, they have a dinner party, and it's his good friend. What's his name?
Gale.
Yeah. He comes over with his girlfriend, and was sort of that dynamic is pretty interesting too. The between the four of them, right? They're trying to have a dinner party, but there's still a lot of like uncomfortable tension between the husband and wife.
We get an idea that he's really distracted though, because look at what he bought. He bought like nothing for dinner. He just bought like all wine and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what really set up. The wife was like, "Oh, he spent all that money for a dinner and didn't get everything he got was wine and a toy." And it was like it caused another a little bit of a rift.
What did you guys think of that dinner party? Sort of just like how it all played out. I mean, let's just jump right into that whole dinner party, that whole scene.
It was intense.
Yeah,
that's all I'm gonna say. It was intense.
Yeah. I mean, it started out okay, until that whole fight about what was it about war or something when he was back in the war or something.
Well,
was that what
he started kind of talking. They started. Well, he was talking to Gal's date Fiona because she works in quote unquote human resources and all that, and and he kind of started poking the bear a little bit about that, saying, I'm sure the people that you get fired, their families would enjoy that. And then of course his wife Shell was kind of saying, well, when did you start caring about, you know, a family or something like that. And then
Yeah.
it just kind of was like, wow, here we go.
even 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 when they were talking about her job, that was like uncomfortable with him, you know, because he's like, you know, well, someone takes it personally, you know, and their families, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, sort of casting judgment, and just like, I don't know, I would be uncomfortable if I was that chick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree.
I think the one thing the fight too did establish one thing. We sort of had a hint about it, but I mean, for me anyway, was that the wife was definitely his peer.
Yeah.
You know, she was not intimidated, nor was she. You know, if you notice, she wasn't like cowering. She wasn't like, you know, like crying. She wasn't like, no, not at first. You know, and you know, even then, you know, later on we find out what she was really doing. But you know, she was nose to nose, you know, with her husband, trying to get him back on track. You know, trying to get him going again. I thought that was really interesting.
And you also learned that she was in the military. She served in the Swedish military.
Yeah.
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 And it wasn't mandatory.
You knew she was badass. So
was
why
because
should she like be afraid of her husband? She could probably kick his ass.
Right. And she's like, well, you know, why should all the boys have all the fun? So yeah, you could
Exactly.
tell that like her character was a badass.
She's a tough one. Yeah.
Tough one for
Yeah.
sure. That dinner scene did a couple of interesting things for the storytelling. It sort of like set up the tension, but it really sort of did a really good job of introducing us to Gal, right? And sort of getting a sense of his character, because we don't know what the hell they are so far, but you know, they have this big fight, and he goes and he comforts his son, and you know, it's like you can tell he's a close family friend.
That was a great scene.
Yeah,
It was.
I really liked that character.
Yeah, he was great.
I really liked him a lot.
Yeah. Michael Smiley. I mean, you know, and just what he was saying to the kid and how he was comforting him, and just, you know, not only what he was saying, but the way he said it. He was a character, for me anyways, I gravitated towards really quickly, even before I knew, you know, his relationship with Jay. And of course, once I realized that they really were best friends, that made me like him even more, you know. But he was fantastic throughout the whole movie. Every scene that he was in, I was right there. He had great dialogue. He had great delivery as well.
Yeah. Right. When he was comforting the guy's son, I mean, he was even telling him, you know, they're drinking, you know, don't pay any mind to them. It's nothing to worry about. And he's like, and make sure you don't drink, you know. I like that because alcohol is poison.
Not even water, especially not that shit.
Yeah.
You know, I thought all three of the leads were just dynamic, you know. They really were, and you know, and definitely, because you know, when you found out that the guy, the husband who played Jay, and Myanmar Burring had worked together before, you weren't really surprised to hear that, because it's like they looked comfortable. You know, they had great chemistry, and it really elevated the movie tremendously.
Yeah,
and Michael Smiley was awesome.
You saw not only how Gal comforted the son, but he comforted Jay and the wife, right?
Yes.
So you see, like, and all in sort of different ways, but in a way that you feel like kind of endeared to the character, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a really good introduction to him. We also are introduced to his girlfriend, who mysteriously scribes some kind of symbol behind their mirror and takes some bloody Kleenex, right? Puts it in her bra for later, I guess. But that was a kind of foreboding and interesting. You're like, what in the hell is that about, you know? And it's, of course, the symbol that's on the front and throughout. So you sort of like, you know, that it means something, right?
Mm-hmm. She was creepy looking.
She was a little creepy. She looked like a oh my God, I can't believe I'm spacing the name. She looked like a pretty Pet Cemetery. What was the sister's name?
Oh my God, I can't believe I'm forgetting.
I'm glad I'm not the only person spacing it. I mean,
I can't think of it either at the moment.
Holy shit, guys, we suck.
Zelda.
You know why we can't remember it though, right? We all know why we can't remember it.
Blocked it out, dude. PTSD.
Yeah, we blocked it out.
but she was like a pretty Zelda. So there you go. She had kind of like a masculine look about her, I guess. But that was pretty weird, and you're left a little confused. But we're also introduced to the fact that Gal knows about this job, and he wants to take the job, and he wants him to get back on the horse, Jay, to get back on the horse. And so that's introduced to that dinner scene too. Zelda was a guy. I think that's why I brought her up because Zelda, an actor played her in the movie. Yeah, I thought that whole scene really set up a lot of stuff, and we see that Jay gets sort of drawn back into it, right? We still don't really know what they're doing, right? But we do find out sort of in the next part of the movie that they're mercenaries, right? Sort of like ex-military. There's I got a sense that they were ex-military, that they served together, and somehow his wife also military, so. Just a bunch of three badasses that are now working, sort of doing this job. But it's really interesting because that's a job, if you think about hitmen, you think like they're just like bad people, right? But in this context, you see that they're doing really bad things, but they're just normal people, It's a really interesting dynamic, I thought.
Yeah, you would have never, their whole demeanor, if you see them on the street or were to have a cup of coffee or whatever, you would have never guessed that they were, they were cold-blooded. And, that's when you got the idea that the wife knew, and the wife is probably their control, like she's probably the between the clients and those two, and, it's probably one of the reasons why she managed the money. And so that's why she knew how much they spent, where they spent it at. And, so you got the idea that, that those three were definitely a team, but you never knew it until they sat down in the car and they started discussing it. And then it got serious.
Right.
And you also see that she's in on it, right? She's like, her husband's work isn't a mystery to her. She knows exactly what he does, and she knows about Kiev, and she, she knows everything. So they're really truly partners, right? Even though there's a lot of the friction, they're like equal partners in life. Which was a cool dynamic. But they go to meet the client to set up this job. And it's, then that's when you're starting to realize that who they are, because they get all strapped up and they go in, right? And they meet the client, and he sort of mysteriously like grabs his hand and cuts the palm, right? Cut too. I mean, I wouldn't have been okay with that shit. And then Gal, of course, draws a gun. So there's this tension. You see that Gal definitely has his back no matter what. And he's proficient at being a badass. And Jay's like, no, it's cool. Whatever. I guess it was blood contract or something, right? Something like that.
Yeah, deal. Basically made a deal with the devil.
But I still would have said, like, fuck you, dude. Don't cut my palm. Tell me about my finger, you son of a bitch, or something, right?
It happened so quick, though. How could you react?
Well, and the guy, because the guy, the guy was just kind of looking down at the paper, and then he just grabs his hand and says "necessary" and cuts. It was like so quick. I was like, wow. And
it's not the usual prick you see in the movie too. You always see that little prick on the finger, and then you sign it. No, he sliced his hand. He needed stitches. He was cut. It wasn't a little thing. It was like, wow, holy shit.
Yep.
Yeah, and when he cut his own hand, it was not nearly as deep, by the way. I'll just throw that in there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Son of a bitch. So they set this job. It's a kill list. There's 3 people to kill. And that's all we know so far. So they're back on the horse. Of course, the dude mentions Kiev, and they're like, "How the fuck did he know about Kiev?" And he's like, "Hey, he's just letting us. He knows shit. Okay, it's like a mind. It's like a, psychology."
But in their business, there's chatter. There's chatter. Of course, there's going to be chatter. And so, for him to know about their background, vet them out, it really didn't cause any like red alarms to me. It's like, okay, yeah, maybe they knew something they shouldn't have known, But if they're
Mhm.
inside, if they find these guys to do a job for them, why wouldn't they know about their background? I mean, wouldn't
Yeah,
you want
they're
to
gonna
know?
check them out.
Sure, sure.
So after that meeting, they sort of get to work, right? And it's still sort of tension. They mentioned Kiev. They've mentioned Kiev a few times. They never talk about what actually happened in Kiev.
Mhm.
But we get a sense. Let's see if I'm getting the chronology, whatever the timeline. Right? I feel like Porky Pig all of a sudden. But they go to dinner. They check into the hotel. His car gets declined. So there's still tension there between him and his wife. He's like, I look like a fucking asshole because whatever,
Mhm.
spend all our money.
Right.
And of course, Gal again smooths everything over. He's like, whatever, don't worry about it, dude. I'll pay for it. But they check in the hotel to do their research, I guess. They go to dinner. Was the dinner scene at that point? You guys remember when they go out to
Yeah.
the restaurant and there's like, yeah, so they go to the restaurant and this is where you first start to really see like a sense of Jay's character, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a church group there who's
Right.
like, and he's really annoyed by the fact that they're so like happy and loving God and shit. And him and Gal are joking about it. What did you think of that dynamic between him and Gal about that? And then ultimately he goes and confronts the Bible group or whatever. What did you think of that whole scene?
I thought we saw for the first time, we saw that, not only was Gail his best friend, but he's also sort of like his watcher because, you see that that Jay was just too quick tempered
Hothead.
and and that's something you don't have in that you don't last long in your line of work if you have a temper like that. You just don't.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You make too many mistakes. You draw too much attention to yourself, and that's everything totally against what you're trying not to do if you're a professional
Mhm.
hitman. So, I definitely, we definitely see Gal just be concerned right away, like, holy crow, we don't want this sort of attention drawn to us. We don't want anybody coming to our rooms because they took their kits inside the rooms, including their weapons. You don't want any of the
Mhm.
attention like that. So, yeah, it was a little bit of alarming to see his loss of control.
But at the
How
same
about you, Zach?
time, well, I was gonna say at the same time, it almost seemed like Gal almost not goaded him into it, but it seemed like it was
Kind
almost
of.
like he almost yeah, it almost seemed like he almost expected it because like even afterwards, he was smiling during it and he kind of chuckled and this and that. So I mean,
Both
I
of
don't
them
know.
did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
when they were walking down the
they
hall
were.
afterwards,
Yeah.
they both kind of it seemed like to me like two buddies, they're out having a drink, and Jay, loses his cool a little bit because he kept saying he better not start singing or playing that guitar. Is he gonna play that guitar? And Gal's sitting there like, yeah, I think he is. I think he is. So it's almost like two buddies hanging out. And then of course Jay confronted him. And then Gal was just trying to, mop up the mess a little bit. And he did it in a
Yeah.
joking way. He's like, excuse me for my friend.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
waitress, give him a round of orange
Orange
juices
juice.
and this and that. And yeah, so
I
Put in a
really
good
like
word to the big
these.
guy for me. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, like I thought these two guys, their chemistry was great. Like I was telling Knight, it reminded me of in Pulp Fiction with
Yeah.
uh
Yeah.
Oh,
John
John
Travolta
Travolta and
and
Samuel
Sam
Jackson.
Jackson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought they were great together. You had
Mm.
one who's like always over the edge, and the other one who was keeping it under control. You know what I mean? It was I liked their chemistry together
Mm.
and how they
Yeah.
worked together.
And you can tell like that whole scene like didn't really bother either of them too much. I mean, I imagine it
Yeah.
bothered the church people a lot more than it bothered them. Like, even though he was a
Mm.
hothead and he went over and he like confronted him through the guitar on the ground and stuff, like it seemed like it just sort of like washed right over him and they were joking about it in the hallway like seconds later,
Mm.
right? Um
Mm.
so they go to the first person on the list is a priest.
Yeah.
Right. And you could tell Gal was a little hesitant about it. He's sort of like, you could tell he was raised a Catholic or something, right? And like he was a little conflicted about killing a man of God. But they go to meet the priest. What did you guys think of that scene?
Yeah, that was a little unsettling. You know, you could definitely see the conflict Gail had with it, and you know, it was not like, you know, wasn't like, you know, it wasn't. I don't think they were expecting their Mark to be anything like that. You know, like I think they expected him to be a gangster or, or you know, that sort of thing. You know, a competitor or something like that. But to have a priest, I mean, yeah, and I thought the you know the movie really ratcheted up to something different. Is when the priest said thank you.
Yeah,
That creeped the hell out of me. That was like,
and he smiled first
yeah,
too.
smiled, yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't mad at him. He was like, "Thank you, thank." It was like an honor. It was like, okay, now who in the hell does that?
But the thing that was weird about so at first they mentioned it, right? And you have no context, so you're like, okay, he's a man of God. Maybe he feels like he's going home to heaven or something. That's what I was thinking. Like, it didn't seem. It seemed odd and it seemed weird, especially the smiling part. But the thank you part, I don't know. It didn't quite have as much context as until later in the movie, right? For me,
because you could have taken it another way. Because you could have taken it when Jay said "turn around," meaning turn away from me. You know, it's almost in a way a more merciful type of kill. So you could, if you're looking at it just from a hitman type of movie perspective, you might have been thinking, "Oh, well, thank you for at least not shooting me in the face," type of thing. You know.
Yeah, exactly. You don't really know what to make for it, so make of it. When I first saw it, I didn't find it creepy, but Patrick had good intuition, I guess. Coriander,
well, you know, it's when at that dinner party when Gal's date scratched that mark behind the mirror, you knew that he was marked, and it was interesting that this priest said thank you, but you know, I don't know, it was I don't know what I'm trying to say. It was almost like I don't know what I'm trying to say. But
I think you're right on you're right on the track. I mean, they did mark him. I mean, not only that they marked him with, okay, here's our subject. So there he is. There's the first part, and it's almost like in a sense they were trying to do maybe perhaps a long range spell, because you got marked, then you got cut, you got signed.
Yeah.
And then
she took his blood, like you said, on the paper towels.
Paper towel.
So
so you can see the wheels slowly in the background, but but the action is going so fast and furious in the front. You know, unless you're really looking for that, and who was, because I wasn't, because I was like, okay, I noticed that, and I wasn't putting it together. I was thinking, okay, this is sort of weird, but it's like, okay, what's the payoff? But I had no idea. I definitely knew that he was marked, and when the priest said thank you, it did come across as weird and creepy, because who normally would do that? I mean, even a man of God will show fear in the face. I mean, most of us all do.
But it was sort of set up a little bit too in the restaurant. He goes and confronts them, and like he's pissed. He snatches the guitar and he's like, you know, talking about how he's going to kick his ass or something, right? And like the man of God is just like, God loves you, you know, like, so he's sort of like you know, matching his hate with love, right? And so like that was in my mind too, and during that scene, you know, I'm like, okay, you know, maybe that's just what Christians do. I don't know, I'm not religious, you know. But anyway, they kill the priest. It's kind of, there's some weird stuff, you're not sure what to make of it. They go incinerate his body, and I think that night after that, Jay is in his hotel room and he sees what's her face, right?
Fiona.
Fiona, across the street from the hotel, standing there, and she sort of waves at him, and he waves back. And I wasn't sure, like, does he know who that is? You know, or like, it was a weird scene. But you see that she's still somehow attached to him, right?
Yeah. Well, the wife said the wife had mentioned that Fiona had been coming around.
Right. Yeah. Also very weird.
Yeah, and it was kind of weird because it's almost like part of me was thinking, was he hallucinating, or because the way he waved at her, it didn't seem to be like a comfortable wave. It was kind of almost like a, oh,
Am I seeing this
hi,
type of
type
thing?
of thing.
Is she really there?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the look on her face was kind of weird. I mean, obviously later on you can come up with some assumptions, but at this point in the movie, I was wondering like, wow, what's going on here? Is this real or is it not?
Yeah. Voss in the chat, by the way, saying, I was typing a thing, but he was saying he couldn't be the only person who thought the Hunchback reveal was very reminiscent of a Serbian film. I have not seen a Serbian film, but I'm pretty sure Kill List came out well before a Serbian film. So if anything, I would say Serbian film reminiscent of Kill List. But I do know the story of a Serbian film, so I know what you're referencing. Yeah, I guess we will get to that there towards the end. That's the third act. It's a pretty intense third act. But the hitman Gal and Jay go on to the next job, and it's just a dude, right? They see him coming out of a storage unit.
The librarian is what they call him.
They call him the librarian. He refers to himself as a librarian too later on. But before they go to confront him, they go check out his storage container, and it's has a bunch of weird pornography in it, right?
Kitty porn.
Well, they don't know what it is. He says,
yeah, they don't know until they watch the thing.
They're trying to figure out what he was, what his story was. They go in and they see a bunch of porn. They're like, is he in the porn industry? And they're like, no, not enough of it. And they go look at the laptop, and we don't know what was on that laptop actually.
You could hear screaming.
You hear screaming, and I watched it with the closed captioning, and it said "woman screaming."
Yeah, there was a woman screaming.
Yeah.
It could have been a snuff film. It could have been snuff.
I was thinking snuff when I saw it, but for a snuff film, like Jay actually had like sort of like just such a reaction to it that it couldn't have been just a standard snuff film, right? I mean, but you don't know.
Kind of like Patrick said, I think it is with underage minors.
It has to be something extra like that that's really just enough to disturb a fucking hardened hitman,
Exactly.
Because the father, the father in him.
And
because he did say pervert.
Sorry, go on.
No.
What did you say, Nate?
He did call the librarian a sick pervert.
Right. Yeah, he did.
That scene was rough. Where they confront the librarian, that was a rough scene.
Yeah, that was pretty brutal.
Yeah,
they were still like fresh off of investigating the lockup there, the storage unit. They go in there, and they sort of have like, both of them had an emotional reaction to that video on the laptop.
Yeah, they did.
And so they go in kind of like, they're curious, like, what the fuck is that? We killed a priest. Now we killed this dude who's got this fucking type of video at his storage unit. Like, so they're starting to try to figure out like, what's this list all about? Like, what are we into here? So they interrogate him, and you sort of start seeing how unhinged Jay is, right?
Yes.
Man, we heard some bots up in this motherfucking chat. They just keep coming in. But at any rate, that whole scene, let's talk about it. You see Gal sort of is like, where's the money, right? So he's more interested in sort of like, he's not quite as like unhinged and just out for blood as Jay is. But they're interrogating him, trying to figure out like what his story is, rather than the priest who they just killed, But yeah, what did you guys think of that when after Gal goes to sort of check out the safe and Jay is alone in the kitchen with the librarian?
It was crazy.
Yeah.
I have not seen, let's put it this way. I think Martin Scorsese was sitting on the other side of the room taking notes because that was the brutality scene straight from a gangster movie. I mean, true gangster movie. That was really, I haven't seen something like that in a long time. I mean, it was, you know, at the same time, you knew the guy was a piece of shit, so you didn't have any empathy for him. But still, it was really strong scene, and yeah, not much more to say than that. It was rough, but essential. It wasn't gratuitous, you know. It wasn't just like, you know, for shock's value, you know, shock's sake. There's a reason why that Jay did that, and you know, he understood that, and of course, you know, when he's turned around, and every time he's turned around and he's saying thank you for it, and then, you know, it just enraged Jay all that much more and increased his level of violence, because he couldn't break this guy. This guy, every single time he do what he did, and he was just there to look back at him and say thank you in a pleasant way.
And it was not only that, it was like the priest. It's like the priest reaction plus, right? Because he's like, it's so great to meet you, and like that type of stuff.
Yeah.
This is
it was
like
a weird
being tortured, right? So you're like, okay, now there's a pattern here. What the fuck is this pattern about?
And not only that, but they had that talk that librarian was telling him how your buddy doesn't know who you really are, and you know, saying all this weird shit to him before he started beating him with the hammer. So that was kind of making you think, well, what the fuck is he talking about now? You know, who is Jay? You know, that made even more questions come up. So.
And of course, Jay has no idea himself. That's the thing.
What the hell? Exactly.
I have no idea what you're talking about. So let me hit you another 10 times with this hammer.
It was brutal, man. And I watched the interview on my Blu-ray. I watched an interview with Ben Wheatley where he was talking about how because I think the question was something about the brutality of the shocking brutality of the movie, and he was like, you know, he wanted it to be based in realism, so not really shocking, but he didn't want it like romanticized or to be any like you know, diminished by his storytelling. So he said it's just sort of done matter of factly, you know, the violence is the violence as it would happen, and it was
like
it
exactly
was like
realistic.
They show him just smashing his fucking kneecap, and he smashes his hand with the hammer. And ultimately smashes his head in with the hammer.
Yeah, the hammer, and they showed that too.
And it was convincing. It was convincing, like filmmaking, because you see him take the dude. You see the dude, right? He sort of talks in the scene when you see him, but you don't see him say words. So it's clear after you watch it that it's a dummy, right? Because there's no cut.
Sure. But this idea that you're seeing a guy, he really is hitting the victim. He's most of the time for a shot like that.
Skull flap up and it was brutal. Yeah.
Good scene though.
It was.
It was hard to watch, man. It really was.
And Gal comes back and sees like him, and he's like, "Oh shit, Kiev again? What the fuck?" You know, like. So you're starting to realize, like, okay, shit went south in Kiev, probably because this guy was unhinged and like just shit went bad. But you could tell his reaction was like, it was kind of an interesting reaction. It was kind of like, you know, what a father's reaction might be if he came in and saw like his kid had drawn all over the walls with crayons or something. It was like, he wasn't like freaked out of it. He was just like, oh, what the fuck, you know, like,
right.
It was great that dynamic. You still continue to see that dynamic between them.
Didn't he even say like, you're cleaning up this all by yourself?
Yes,
like
I was gonna say that. Yeah, he did say that.
And no dinner until afterwards either.
Yeah.
But I forgot to mention, as they were interrogating him, they got an address out of the librarian, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
And that's where
he just said, "I'm just a librarian." He even made it clear that it wasn't his shit; it was someone else's.
Right. And you're left wondering, like, is this some kind of weird snuff ring? Like, what? You still have no idea what this movie's about at this point.
Right.
And so they go to the address, and of course you see Jay is like still unhinged. He's like unraveling even more, and he's like, if come get me in 20 minutes if I'm not back. That's what he tells Gal.
Yeah.
So Gal just waits there for 20 minutes, and then he goes in and he sees the fucking just a chaotic mess. He had shot the dog, shot some dude in the kitchen, and he finds him beating some dude's head into a wall.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, has it been 20 minutes already?" Like, but so you can see he's sort of like this on this crusade at this point, and he's going off script, really.
Yeah.
And you can see the Gal sort of like not super great about it. He's not really okay with it, you know what I mean? But it's his best friend, so he's like, whatever, What did you guys think of sort of how you saw their dynamic changing in that relationship, or like, or did you guys notice anything like what did you think of that whole?
You just thought to yourselves that these guys weren't going to get away with it. They were leaving way too much of a mess behind, and sooner or later the cops are going to be involved, because at the time that you're thinking, it's like a gangster type movie, so you're thinking the cops are going to get involved. There's just too much mess. I mean, and they weren't really cleaning it up all that well. I mean, they're touching everything with their hands. They didn't have any gloves on or anything. And you just thought sooner or later, they're going to get caught. It's just too much of a racket, too much of attention bringing to themselves. That's what I thought at first.
Yeah, well, it seemed like, I think the thing that was noticeable is Gal started to really, you could tell that he was getting to the edge of patience, with Jay, and he was just like, this is, we're way off the list. You're going crazy every time you got a hammer in your hand and that type of thing. And obviously that's what led to him saying, I can't work with you anymore if you're going to be like this. So it's kind of like, oh man, here we go. You just knew it was going to be just going further and further down the hill,
Right.
And I mean, I thought it was interesting too how his friend, talked to Gal, talked to Jay's wife too, saying, "Be careful, watch yourself around him because he's slipping."
Yeah. And you also, like, this is the point where they're talking about this job, like, should we just quit this job altogether? Like, this is not really going how we want it to go. And like, so they go and have another meeting with the dude.
Yeah. They offered to hire, to pay for the, next sit themselves out of their money. They said, we even know a couple of guys that resemble us, and we'll pay you.
Right.
And yeah, they try to do that. I think it was really interesting before that was they had that fight. And I remember Jay and Gal had a fight. Yeah. And, they're going like, they're rumbling around, but each one was like within reason. It was like, don't hit me in the face, not in the face.
Yeah.
It also wasn't because he broke that glass over the back of his fucking head, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought that was funny too.
Yeah, that was funny. It just showed how they were still friends even when they fight.
Yeah.
I mean, you could tell there was like that sort of brother relationship, right? Where like,
yes,
like they're, no matter what goes down, they're still there for each other. But they also, they're like family. They're gonna have fights and shit,
Yep.
Right. Yep.
So they go to that meeting and they try to get out of it. And the dude's like, well, you can't really get out of it or we're going to kill you and your families. So
yeah. And they bring out all that information on them, on their whole background. I mean, all the background that some of the stuff they shouldn't have known about, including all the pictures of all the hits they just got done doing. So they're being blackmailed and squeezed.
Yeah.
I mean, so
I guess I forgot to mention Gal had found a Kiev folder in the safe at the librarian's house and like a bunch of other folders, right? So that's when they were like, what's this about? But yeah, you see that they're just sort of like in this job now. There's no way out. So they just have to see it through to the end. And so they do, right? They go to this final place. They're gonna camp out. There's not in the hotel. They're gonna camp out in the wilderness and like go take care of this last dude who lives in this ginormous mansion.
Yeah, he was a member of parliament. He was a member of parliament. He was a politician.
Yep.
And so they like go there to scope out the joint. What their plans are to just sort of scope it out and then deal with it the next day. And they get woken up by some shenanigans, right?
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. And what did you guys think of this? So this is where we start. We do see like at one point there was we see the infection of his cut is getting infected, right?
Yeah, it is.
He's got some kind of weird shit happening on his skin. And so things are getting worse. Someone kills his cat and hangs it up in front of their thing. So there's like now there's some
And
weird
that
stuff.
doctor, when he went to his doctor, right?
Right.
And well, that dude who
And it was a
wasn't his
different
doctor,
doctor.
he was like, "Where is my
Mhm.
doctor?"
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
He's like,
And
some
that guy
advice.
was telling him,
Some
"Yeah,
advice.
yeah.
The past has happened, the future isn't here, so all we have is now.
Yeah.
That's why they
Right.
call it a present, guys. It's a gift. But
Right.
but they so anyway, all that shit is sort of happening. You're starting to see there's some weird shit. You're seeing more like cult imagery, and now you full on see this
Like
weird
Wicker Man shit." That's
Wicker
what I
Man
thought
shit.
of
Yeah.
with the
Yes,
masks and
I did
the whole
too.
paganism and
Yeah. And you see
Yep.
it's like a procession of these like naked
Yep.
dudes wearing straw masks, dudes and dudettes.
some naked, some wasn't.
Some naked, some weren't, but they were on their way to some kind of ceremony, and they sort of like, "Wake up, dude! What's this shit all about?" So they go and they check it out. The ceremony is someone sacrifices themselves, right? Some chick
Willingly.
willingly.
Yep. Yeah.
And this just is a little too much for Jay. Jay's like, "Oh fuck this," and Gal's like, "Dude, there's too many of them. Don't do shit."
Yeah,
Right?
he should have listened.
Yeah.
It's actually, this sort of the dynamic really reminded me of Cold in July between
Yes.
John Johnson and the other dude, because they were like
I was
that kind
thinking
of
that too.
that kind of brotherhood, and then they're like, okay, one dude's a hothead, he's like pissed about it, but he's going to get his back regardless, right? So that's how that goes down. They start firing, and they get bum rushed by a fucking cult.
Yeah.
And
And that priest dude just opened his arms and let him kill him.
Yeah.
Like, here I am, and shoot me.
And when that happened, that's when I was starting to say, oh, because like, at this point you see the cult and you're thinking, yeah, we're going down that road. But the priest, as the gunfire was happening, the priest, and there were some of the people in the cult that were screaming, and you could see them kind of moving, but the priest just turns around, he puts his arms out as if to say, yes, take me.
Here I am.
Oh man. Yeah. Yeah.
I think, and the thing, I think it was, with those two guys, it's like, here you go, you're heavily armed. I mean, for what they were heavily armed. And the fact of the matter is, you knew they were in trouble. They must have known they were in trouble is when they broke, right, they opened up with their automatic weapons, and they didn't run. They ran at, they didn't run from you. They ran to you. They wanted to close in with you. And to me, I was like, wow, we're we have superior firepower, but these guys are willing to kill themselves just to get to us.
Yeah.
And that was really spooky too.
They killed a lot of them too.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Yep, and they get sort of like chased into this tunnel system. And it's very narrow, and the shit's it's like chaotic, right? So they're like basically, they get separated.
Which that was so crazy. I mean, I understand Gal was like shooting at those people that were coming in there, but like you said, they shouldn't have separated, because I bet what happened wouldn't have happened if they did.
Yeah, they stayed back to back, right? Guarded both pathways.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Yep.
But they didn't, and Gal gets killed. He gets stabbed.
His intestines. I mean, that was awesome. They were hanging out. Yeah, you knew he was in trouble.
And that whole scene, he says it. He's like, "I'm done, dude." And and you can see
he acted like a friend. He acted like a friend. I mean, Jay stood back and Mercy killed him. So other than let him to die at their hands. I mean, who knows how long he would have been tortured. He actually helped his friend out. I thought that was I thought that was a good scene.
And Gal was like encouraged. He was like, "I'm done, dude. Just do it. Just end it."
Yeah.
And he did. But that was a bummer, because Gal was the dude who was awesome in that movie, right? He was so now you see like, okay, this is even worse than Kiev now, right? He's just like unhinged, and
he tells his wife to go to a different house. He calls the wife, and that was my.
They did that already. They were already at the cottage.
They were already there, yeah.
Oh, were they already? Because we
and
didn't
she,
do that.
and
Yeah.
she went of her own volition too. She was like,
Yeah,
I'm going to the fucking cottage, dude, till this shit blows over.
right.
And it's like,
It was
yeah,
before
okay.
it's before they
Yeah.
went to kill the MP.
Yeah, I guess thinking, wow, how would they know where to go? But I guess Fiona must have known about that and turned them on to it.
And you get the feeling that they knew a lot more about them than they knew about that, right? So like,
right.
somehow they had been marked since the beginning, and
They
you can
were.
sort of see this playing out. And ultimately, he goes to the cottage to be with his family and like protect them, and like that shit doesn't really work out so well, right?
No.
He gets taken. He gets taken. You don't really see what happens. Like basically, there's people out there. So they're caught. He goes to kill a bunch of them, but he gets knocked out. You see his wife is a badass, double tapping motherfuckers with her pistol.
Right? Yeah.
Pistol as they're coming in, and she goes out the front and just fucking tap. And but she's a badass, and it just sort of cuts. You get the sense that she just doesn't have enough bullets. You don't know what happens. And next thing we know, we're at some kind of ceremony, right? He's like sort of shirtless. There's all these people, the same cult people around, naked, half naked, and like weird mask. They put a weird mask on him. And now we enter the final chapter, which is the Hunchback.
Yeah.
And they superimpose it on the screen too.
Yeah. Yep.
It was, they weren't that person wasn't listed. It was supposed to be the priest, the librarian,
and the MP.
And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, the Hunchback.
Yeah, so the Hunchback's in, and they sort of prepare him. He's sort of spacey. You don't know if either he's drugged or just groggy, head injury, whatever. But he just sort of is like, okay, I have a knife, and now I have an adversary, and there's this Hunchback person that I gotta fuck up real quick here. And they have a pretty good battle. This weird Hunchback thing in a sheet with a mask, sort of also holding its own. But Jay wins the day and is very successful. Ends up killing the Hunchback. And the Hunchback is revealed to be his. Oh, spoiler alert, guys!
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, super spoiler.
Super spoiler. The Hunchback is revealed to be his wife with their kid tied to her back.
Yeah.
So that's what the Hunchback
when
was.
he was stabbing her, and you could hear his son's like, screams. Oh man, that was sad. It really was.
Yeah.
I couldn't understand why the wife, though, when after he's stabbing her, after he delivers the fatal blow, she starts to fall back, and all of a sudden she's laughing.
She's laughing, yeah.
She laughs.
The everyone else applauds, the cult applauds, and she laughs, and he's like, "What in the fuck?" I just killed my wife and son, and he's like out of it. You can tell. And then it just cuts to the kill list.
They put that crown, that weird crown on his head.
Yeah, he's the cult leader.
Yeah,
he either that or he took over. It's so funny because when you watch this like a second time, it's almost obviously you'll understand the movie better. But you realize like when oh shit, I get thoughts when they pop out of my head. Was when the cult guy. Well, anyway, continue, and then if I can get it, I'll say it again. But I lost it. Damn it!
So there's a pretty like intense conclusion to this film, but you're still left not knowing what the fuck you just watched. Right? You don't know anything about the cult. You don't know why they were marked. You don't know like what that ritual was, what they're trying to accomplish. So there's a lot of questions that are just left open, but it's still a very satisfying film. You know, they
Well,
didn't.
let me ask you guys a question. Let me ask you a question though.
Yeah.
Now we watched this movie and watched the end of it and all that. Which one do you think was more effective? The ending to Kill List or the ending to Hereditary?
I mean, they're kind of different movies.
But they have.
I think Hereditary. I think Hereditary had a better third act. If I'm honest, had more of an impact.
Okay, I'm going to agree with you on this, Ben. I'm going to agree with you on that. But the reason why my problem with the third act was there really wasn't enough development of it. It was all of a sudden it was like two hitmen, two normal guys doing jobs. Like I said, it looked like a really more of like action adventure movie than it did anything else. And then in the third act, all of a sudden, bam, it slams you with this really heavy occultism. And you're sort of wondering, like, where did that come from? I mean, it was like out of the blue. And I just
in the beginning, when that chick marked the mirror, it kind of told you right there that you're getting into something like an occult or something.
Yeah,
but they just let the
I mean, it was
little scenes, but they never really expounded on it. It was like they cut his hand, okay, but there's no, there's nothing, no, like after they left, the bad guys around are like, okay, we got him, or the fact, or anything. There's no dialogue between, the members or anything else. There's no signs of it.
Yeah.
It's almost like too, like when these guys, when they're killing him and they're saying thank you, it's almost like you're realizing, like, they know who this guy is. Like, he's going to replace someone,
right?
And they know, you know what I mean?
The way I took it was he was marked. We saw that from the beginning. We know something bad happened in the past, and for whatever reason, like, all these people know about it. These people that they got the contract out for it and stuff. And when they're saying thank you, it's almost like they're honored. They're honored to be. He's like the chosen one, or whatever you want to call it. And especially with the librarian, that's when that started to kind of come into my mind, in the sense of saying, okay, they're only singling Jay out.
Right.
Jay and Gal, they're both hitmen. They're both, let's assume they're both on the same level of ability. Obviously, one is a hothead and the other isn't. But for whatever reason, they keep saying thank you only to Jay. We saw that he got we saw he got marked earlier in the movie. So that's when I started to think to myself, the cut. And
they
so
took his blood
when
sample.
It would have been nice. It would have been nice to know why. How did he earn their the look? What caused them to come get him? Because honestly, if you look at it, he would be the last person you would get, because look how hot-headed he was. Look how noisy he was and unorganized. I mean, he was not the persona of Gao, who was quiet and efficient and didn't bring attention to himself. Because as a cultist, you don't want to go out and bring attention to yourselves, especially if you're high profile, like the minister, like the member of parliament. That guy has a high profile look. You're not going to want anybody looking at him as a cultist. No. And it just made me. It was just like, why Jay instead of Gal? Because it would have made more sense,
I didn't feel like they had selected him to be like a high-ranking member or anything. To me, it was like he was like Donald Pleasance in The Wicker Man, right? He was like a necessary thing for this ritual they want, but he wasn't going to like be part of the inner council or something. I didn't feel like they selected him for that personally.
Yeah, I think he was just chosen because he was an assassin. He was brutal about it. He didn't cry about killing a priest. He didn't really have too much of a problem. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think they would use him to do their killings. If someone they needed taken out, they'd send him to do it. They can trust him. He's part of their group. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, I just thought Gal would have been a better choice for that. I mean, him just looking at that way. He has no family. He has no wife. He's single. I mean, he could go anywhere at any time. He just would have made more of a fit.
He was too tender and nice, and
that's what I was going to say. Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
He didn't have that personality or that type of, I don't know.
That's what I was going to say.
I think Jay would have been a better. Yeah.
What I was going to say was I think that Jay's personality was much more closer to that edge where he could cross over, which is what eventually is kind of what happened, because even that doctor, when he was talking about the past is gone, the future isn't here, it's only the present. And then the money guy, the head guy, said, this is reconstruction. I think they were talking about Jay, reconstruction for Jay. Each time he killed, he was closer to that edge.
Right.
And then finally killing his wife and his son. I mean, after you do that, I mean, there's nothing else,
Yeah,
and I think that's also, yeah, and I think that was his transformation, so to speak. At least that's the way I took it.
So did you guys all take it that he was being sort of like inducted into the cult?
Yeah.
I didn't really take it that way. I felt like he was part of like some necessary ritual that they were doing.
No,
So
I felt
almost like a suicide bomber would be, like.
Well, they should have killed him then. You know what I mean?
And he was a cog,
then,
right? It's just a cog.
Well, yeah, but again, it makes more sense to do Jay. To do Gal more than Jay, because Gal would have less people looking for him, less people concerned for him. I mean, if you're going to look at it that way, he would have been far better. He would have been a far better cog, because no one's going to miss Gal. But remember, his wife was on the phone talking to her mom in Sweden, saying how things were rough and this and that, and this and that. So there was trails. Plus, you had a little boy. You don't think anybody was going to come looking for that family once they went missing? Whereas Gal is just a single guy. It's just like he's an ex-soldier. I mean, he'd be more apt to do something stupid. Maybe go off somewhere, run off with somebody. But you're talking about a whole family. And
they were both like cogs in the machine. They weren't like being produced by the machine. That's how I took it. Like they were like just these parts of the machinery, that is making this product that the cult wants to make.
I just think they were picked out of circumstance. It was just bad luck for them.
I think it could have been bad luck for them. Yeah.
Yeah. They were good at what they did. I mean, and unfortunately, that's what happened. They were, they came over and got them and said, "Hey, we got something for you to do." And the ending though, I will say that the fight with the Hunchback, though, honestly, that fight with the Hunchback was a lot more terrifying to me than the Tony Collette in the ceiling. That was really rough watching him, not knowing, but he's stabbing his wife and his kid, and you see it, and it's like, oh, I mean, it was like, wow. I sat there, I was pretty shocked, actually. I didn't expect that to happen. I was like, okay, this is the bad guy, and then it turns out to be his wife and his kid. And I thought this is a brutal movie. This is this is a brutal movie. It's excellent, but it's a rough watch.
Yeah.
I think the thing that's interesting that you bring Hereditary up is Kill List. Hereditary, if my one critique of Hereditary is that it doesn't quite end soon enough. Like it hits its sort of zenith there, and it peaks out, and then it just sort of keeps going in a sort of a slightly it's like you have this big crescendo finale moment, and then it just keeps going on a little too long. And Kill List is the opposite. It has like a real good crescendo moment, and then it just cuts off before you have any understanding of what any of that shit was all about.
Right. It's more. It leaves you more in a what the fuck moment. Like you're sitting there like, with your mouth open. One of those type movies, which is always great. When those movies end like that, and you just sit there with like, that's it. That's that's awesome. Yeah. I will say a little bit of trivia. Do you remember when we're in the car, a radio broadcaster came on, and he was talking in the car about some of the murders, and that was Steve Orem from a Dark Song. I recognized his voice.
Oh wow! Okay.
Nice. I recognized his voice, but then when I saw it when I was doing the research for it, and I was like, oh hell yeah, okay, I was right about that. I don't know why I should be right about that, but I am.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good pick, Ben.
Yeah, it was a good one. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, Ben picked the winner.
It's mysterious, but I feel like it's mysterious, and there's a lot of room for speculation, which is interesting. And I seem to have like a slightly different take than the rest of you guys.
One thing that I wanted to say was, if he wasn't of importance, this dude, to this cult, why would they be thanking him before he killed these people?
No,
So
I
kind of think he has.
He took over the cult.
I think it's sort of like he's a martyr for their cause. Is how I
think they wanted. I think they wanted to get rid of the MP. I think he was the leader, and I think they wanted to get rid of him. So they have. That's the reason why they had him. I think that's whose place he took. I think he took the politician's place.
See, the way I took all that thank you stuff was that they were almost sacrificing them. So they had like knowledge of who this dude was, and they were almost expecting him to come around and kill them, right? And it was part of like they were okay with it because it was part of this thing. So I didn't get the feeling like that's why I got the feeling like there was a lot of people were cogs in this machinery that were martyring themselves, including that woman who hangs herself, right? And the priest is like, "Come fucking shoot my ass," like. So that's sort of how I took it. I didn't think like. I felt like they were all important. They were all serving their role, but I felt like their role they were like sort of martyrs to the cause. The cult to me felt very like Illuminati, right? They were like had their fingers in sort of everything. It was like this secret society, like with high up members, and I felt like these dudes were just like little spinning cogs in their fucking master plan.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But you guys all felt like he sort of was being inducted and like playing a higher role, so that's an interesting take on it.
Well, I don't know if he was going to take over, but I definitely got the sense that he was going to be, and I don't know,
something.
And maybe because how those things are, at least how you hear about them, because I wouldn't personally know, but maybe his transition, into the cult would have been some type of miracle. That they witness or whatever, and as he goes
killing his own family,
right, to kill his own family for the higher cause and all that stuff. Too.
I mean, if you think about it, he killed both his family and his best friend,
and he assaulted a man of God too. So there's that.
Right? Yeah. Yep.
Good movie though. I think we're gonna sort of start to wrap this up real quick because I know Knight, you got to get out here and get to work. But
we get to hear what Coriander's going to pick.
Yeah, let's hear what you're going to pick, Coriander.
Coriander.
Right. So it is called Welcome to Willits.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Have you seen that?
I haven't seen it, but I saw the title when I was perusing all the IFC movies.
Yeah.
So it'll be a first.
I haven't seen it either.
So. Okay.
Me neither.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
Sweet. All right. Well, let's wrap this up, guys. A pleasure as always. Thank you, everyone in the chat who came by. Thank you, bots, for giving us some awesome links to check out later. And until we'll be back. We'll be back at the end.
Let's all say thank you really, really nicely to the bot. Thank you.
Thank you, bots.
Thank you. Right?
Yeah, I know exactly. Thank you. You're a great man, bot. Thank you. Cogs in my master plan, I tell you.
Nice.
Right. All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll be back at the end of the month to discuss Welcome to Willits.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Peace.